Oh, I'm right here looking down at my phone. Oh, I'm right here looking down at my phone. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Where's the thingy? Here we go. Twitch.tv/invocative. Hello, everyone here in the chat. Oh, I've been remiss. Hold on. I have to open Stream Elements real quick because I have to update the counter. Yes. In fact, if you are here and you can hear me and you can see here, well, you don't need to see the sunlight out of the window, but like if you can hear me, we are currently reading. Let me just stop that while I explain. We are currently reading the 2008 Wings of Yuri fan scanlation group translation of Aoi Shiro on the HD remaster release. Now, this did require that I bought this on Steam, and since I couldn't do any of the like hard code editing on Switch, but like, you know, it would just be my life that I need to buy this video game twice. I think somehow there's poetry in that, I guess, at some point in some way. But let me also go ahead and update, because what I mentioned before is I need to update the Yuri vampirism counter, because that has gone up by 14 days. We are treading on dangerous ground here. It is so many days since Yuri vampirism has happened. Who knows what's going to, like, when it will crop up and surprise us. All right, let me size that just a little bit. Resize that there. Get all these things a little bit better. Hold on, I need to, like, switch my camera over. Everything good, all my lighting good, all my everything else like that, because I'm doing with a different setup, so a little bit different than we previously did with the Switch, but let's see what we can't do here. Now, one problem is I have not figured out how. Whoa. Okay, so this is how that works. Wow. Yeah, we remember this minigame. This time I'm learning the Steam controls. So just like when I was learning the Switch controls and accidentally picked that up. Now, can you hear the game audio all right? Oh, okay. Good to know. Alright, let me see what we can do about game audio. Alright, how's that? Do you hear anything there? Oh, a bit loud. Okay. How's these levels? Especially, like, related to my voice. How's this? Alright, perfect. Perfect. Now, there's no way for me, Runa, to hear it. Because at present, I, Runa, do not actually hear that. Oh, I know exactly how to make sure that I, Runa, hear it. So silly. I'm a silly girl. There we go. That's how I hear it. All right. Hello, everybody. We're going back to Aoi Shiro. All right. So, if you're curious, I actually went ahead and got all of the different things that we did previously all taken care of. We are, like, right about back where we left off a couple weeks ago. And so to recap where we're at, just generally in the flowchart, you see that we've made it, like, pretty far down here, but only in this middle part, which is Mikiwa's route. So we've basically gone to day 3. So we're at the start of day 3, right about here. And we have to try and survive, because as we know last time, we found out that you can get killed by demons pretty easily. We also learned a lot about 2 different sort of, like, big plot-related things. First plot-related thing, Mikiwa is actually, like, an onikiri, like someone who goes around hunting and killing demons that are definitely real things and, you know, exist all throughout Japan. No word on if the rest of the world is okay with that, but, she is part of the branch in the Ryukyus, which originally also had, like, some history of its own, and so they had, like, this really cool sword, and somebody stole that sword. And this person who stole the sword is someone that Migiwa said has the same fighting style as Shoko, which is why initially she suspected Shoko of being this like demon-possessed person. I'm just gonna adjust my ambient lighting here a little bit while I do this. And so after like long periods of suspicion, Migiwa was like, okay, I guess it's not you, but it is somebody who fights exactly like you. And then Shoko was like, damn, the only person who fights just like me has got to be my tragically missing older sister, who I haven't seen in many years, not since the incident. And yeah, so that's generally where we left off. After we talked to Migiwa and fought some demons, and Migiwa sort of came and helped out there. And then of course we had that scene of her like very, very tenderly dressing the wound on Shoko's foot. They end up taking a bath together and having like a nice, cordial, jovial conversation. After which, though, Shoko is like, I, for whatever reason, cannot get it in my head that actually really happened, so I'm going to go back to the beach and figure out what the fuck I just saw and try and convince myself either that it was real or not real. And then that's when she sees Nami just wandering around in her pajamas, like, by the seashore. And she carries Nami back up to the temple, and that is where we come to today. And, as I said before, we're now working with the fan translation patch. Now, the number one quality of life improvement for the fan translation patch is that they fixed, like, most of the weird kerning issues and, like, line break issues are not present in the fan patch. There are, like, I'm not gonna lie, I've seen the side-by-side comparisons because people on Reddit and other places have done side-by-side comparisons of the official HD remaster localization and the 2008 fan translation. Neither of them is, like, what you would consider great. But for the most part, I think people's consensus is that the fan translation is easier to read because it's generally made by people who are native English speakers and just don't have a great grasp of Japanese, versus the HD remaster official localization, which people believe was done in-house by someone who does not natively speak English but has like a decent grasp of it. It's really sort of like a half of one, 6 dozen of another sort of situation, but purely because of the formatting issues, we're going to go with the fan translation, which should also make it feel even more 2008 than before. So this is now literally the way that, like, literally the words that I read 15 years ago. So, let us continue on. It wasn't that my nerves were too stimulated that I couldn't sleep through the night, and I did feel my sleep was lighter than usual. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with morning air as I tried to expel the worries lurking in my mind. I temporarily eased the thoughts in my head, but it didn't seem like that would last, unlike sediment that stuck fast to the surface. Breathing sounds. Sleeping in the futon next to mine, Nami's expression and breathing were, Nami's expression and breathing while sleeping were just as they normally would be. Also, I was thankful that those Morio monsters didn't show up while Nami was wandering around by herself. The other team members didn't seem to be the type to walk around late at night either. That's right, speaking of staying in a temple, it seems a long-haired ghost girl had appeared recently. It was a little different than before being beset by problems from within and without as captain, but what should be my response to this? It seems quite some time had passed, as I looked at Nami's sleeping face unawares. From the next room, separated only by a sliding door, I heard the sound of cell phone alarms starting to ring, waking everyone up. So, no ghosted attacked, and Aoi Shiro slept soundly until morning, feeling refreshed. The smile on her face was extremely natural, and her words were probably sincere. With a smile on her face, Yasumi's sharp eyes noticed yesterday's injury. I guess I couldn't just come out and say that a monster attacked me. Well, just in case. It didn't really cost me anything to mention it. It was probably better to give warning, but if it were a prank, this would only increase the amount of unease here. I quickly finished changing and used the long cuffs of my pants to hide the injury on my leg. Is this what cuffing season means? It was still okay not to talk about it, for now. There was still time before it got dark. Even when it does get dark, if no one goes outside, there shouldn't be any problem. The monks lived here for a long time, and if there is a problem, an onikiri like Mikiwa wouldn't leave it alone. Well, I guess that was the best thing. Though perhaps she was making too big of a fuss over it. Salmon shioyaki was the main dish this morning. With miso soup, diced eggplant, and yesterday's leftover pork, there was plenty to be had for breakfast. For side dishes, there was also takoto mozuku, seaweed, and pickled cucumbers made overnight. Also, there's pickled radish. Love Momoko face. Following yesterday's meal of pork was fish today, so Momoko was extremely delighted. Momoko, who is the #1 monopolizer of Yasumi, grabbed a hold of Yasumi's arm and pulled her towards her. Well, there was no mistake that Seijo had a lot of rich ladies attending it, and it wasn't all girls' school. Look at that M-dash. Nice to see an M-dash here. A teacher from that very same all-girls school started talking about something that was a little bit difficult to bring up. If their daughters were to be in the typhoon's path at a far-off camp and couldn't move or evacuate, it would indeed cause them to worry. It seemed to be a little tough on her, since she had to wake up a little earlier than the others and leave before the gates were locked. Setting that aside for now, we had to decide what to do from here on out. Yasumi looked undecided as she lowered her gaze. She said it slowly, but her opinion was clear. Sensei nodded to Yasumi in acknowledgement, and then she turned to look at me. Should we continue the training camp or not? Alright! So, we can vote again. We can vote again. However, I will tell you up front for this one, if we say stop the group training, that just leads to the same ending that we got previously, where it's like, yep, we're going home on the bus. So I think we're going to go based on this information. It's true that the wind's gotten stronger, but the weather didn't look like it was going to get worse just yet. I felt we'd surely regret it if we cut our training short, even when there was no sign of danger. There was also the situation with Nami. We didn't know anything about her yet. If both Yasumi, who she was so attached to, and I went away, she'd feel lonely, I think. I petted Nami's head as she went on working on the salmon bones. Sensei sighed as she realized she couldn't contend with a crying child. In the end, over half the people, including myself, didn't want to end the camp early, so we decided to stay a little longer. There were still no indications that a storm was coming. Perhaps the wind was stronger than yesterday, but because of that, the heat didn't get trapped under the endless sky that seemed to draw you in. The light, dry, delightful crackling sounds flowed and changed, endlessly ringing. After we had finished going through our stretching exercises carefully, we took our wooden swords and began to practice. Since we didn't bring our protectors, we weren't practicing frontal attacks, the receiver would hold the bamboo sword up above their head. It might not be on the level of practicing sparring, but it was still pretty good since you could get a feel of swinging the sword down. Yesterday I'd invited her and she might have accepted in order to keep good relations with us while we were at Shoshinji. However, today, Migiwa herself said she wanted to take part. Migiwa, who annihilated the Morio last night, was much more skilled than us, and we couldn't really be a proper opponent for her. What exactly was she planning? Though since she said my sword skills resembled that Oni, there shouldn't be any other members that could match. Yasumi's whistle blew. It was time for a 10-minute break. We didn't have our protectors at camp, but we still had to be careful to replace fluids and prevent heat stroke. It was fine to leave all that to Yasumi, so it was a good time for me, someone with bad luck, to be captain. I didn't have as many as Akiko-san, but in this world, I think bonds and relationships are far more important than luck. And speaking of the relationships formed on this trip... The eloquent Migiwa had said I wasn't a suspect anymore, but she might just be pretending that was the case. However, I really wasn't the kinky. unlike me, she'd been in a real fight. In addition, the opponent hadn't been human, but an Oni. I kind of wanted to feel her strength myself. I wondered how much of a difference there was between me and Mikiwa. We were the same age, but she'd experienced real battle. Of course, there were a lot of ordinary high school girls who were stronger than me, too. I don't know about Mikiwa, but I planned to stop before contact since we weren't wearing protectors, even though it's still dangerous. Perhaps I always wanted to have a vicious match, since I should be the strongest on the team, and we might be ending camp early. Even though I acknowledged it was dangerous, I accepted her offer of a match. We cleared out an approximate 10 by 10 meter square space and exchanged blows. Bows? Bows. They didn't exchange blows yet. Wow. I jumped ahead of myself. With a stopwatch in one hand, Yasumi announced the beginning of the match. Perhaps Mikiwa planned to observe first, since she held her weapon in a forward stance but didn't attack. I didn't see any openings in that stance, so I couldn't attack either. The reason I didn't rush forward like I always did was probably because of the lack of a protector. Half of me didn't want to get hurt, and half of me didn't want to injure the other person. Shuffling along the ground, I adjusted the distance between us. Still, we couldn't continue to just glare at each other forever, and so I took the initiative and launched an attack. Faced with my straight-on attack, Mikiwa slipped around in a circular direction and dodged. As I passed by Mikiwa, she whispered in my ear so that only I could hear. Mikiwa stated that there was no mistaking my swordsmanship was like that of the Kinki. I immediately turned and pointed the tip of my sword at Mikiwa, preparing for the next attack. Mikiwa didn't take that chance to strike, but continued holding her sword in a ready stance. Only her gaze pierced through me. Was she saying that, due to my physical abilities, she was able to dodge a similar move to one she'd seen before? Did she have suspicions that I was an Oni? Bamboo swords clashed, and Mikiwa and I fought for position. My stance, my step, my swings, in my mind and my heart was burned a perfect model to follow. In order to come closer to those ideal movements, I trained my body and polished my skills. Then, that person who had the same swordsmanship as me was... I probably lost my concentration for only a moment, but like the phrase, instant kill, that was enough to determine the victor. Mikiwa's body leaned back. My bamboo sword reflexively came up in a ready stance as the tip of Mikiwa's sword wrapped around mine. If the opponent concentrates, then a makiwaza that disarms by wrapping your sword around your opponent's shouldn't work. However, since I'd been thinking about something else, I couldn't react to the move. The bamboo sword that left my hand flew up high in the air. Mikiwa didn't point her bamboo sword at my throat after disarming me, but continued to swirl her sword around. Like what happens when placing a finger on a resting dragonfly, the tip of her sword made small circles. I have never placed my finger on a resting dragonfly. I will have to do that to see if it in fact causes, yes. Oh my god, Sarah, yeah, what if in Umineko, every other scene, they were like, man, do you think we should maybe cancel the family conference? Should we? Oh my god, should we? And then like all of the various episodes were just different points at which they did cancel the family conference. And the ending of each one was just them sadly going back on the boat. Well, I guess we'll figure out about that gold next year. Anyhow, I couldn't move. It's not that I was misled by those circles. It was that an unarmed me had lost my only weapon for winning, and so I couldn't move. Faced with Migiwa's next attack, That shout which rang out made both Migiwa and I stop. I let out a breath full of hot air which filled my chest. When did Aoi Sensei and the monk arrive? If anything had happened, the advisor would have been questioned about it. Of course, our teacher was mad. True, that's what I was planning on doing, but I don't remember actually making any agreement with Migiwa about that. She just ran! As a person who had survived in a world of fighting, she really was quick to escape. Well, did I just turn blue? My lighting has changed completely all of a sudden. Anyhow. Okayu. So for lunch we were having chayu, rice gruel made with tea. To accommodate Momoko, who went on and on about meat, it resembled Chinese-style gruel with toppings like ground chicken. There were also edamame and sleet vinegar for dessert, a tomato sliced in half, good for lowering the body temperature. Following from yesterday's summon, today's lunch was also suited to the harsh heat of the south, and everyone was thoroughly pleased. Quietly, the food disappeared from the table. Skipping over the various details involved, Momoko said, "Let's go to the ocean." She was going to say that the entire Kendo team should go. But then Momoko realized that Migiwa was also here. It looked like her voice wavered a bit, which was unlike her. But since Migiwa didn't come to this place to have fun, for me also, though I considered this was mostly recreation, at the very end, coming south was still a training camp for Kendo. It seems that the competent manager in charge of the smooth operations for camp also didn't consider the detail of just playing around. So, 2 people from the Kendo Club were already quickly excluded. It'd be trouble to consider that basic preparation, but the truth was only Yasumi and I didn't bring swimsuits. And of course, Nami didn't have one either. Afterwards, I confiscated Kumochi, which Momoko had wanted to use to split watermelons, and the discussion was left just like that. I caught a hold of Migiwa before she went outside. Because of Migiwa's duty, her final stop should be the Oni Stepping Stones, but she might not go there directly like she did yesterday. It was a lucky thing I was able to catch her while she was still in Shoshinji. I nodded. Like the way Migiwa had hidden everything from me, if I could help it, I'd rather not let anyone else know about this. I didn't want anyone else to hear and get involved in the business of Onikiri, Kinki, and the Morio from yesterday. I had held back and endured during lunchtime. In truth, I'd wanted to ask even before that, but Migiwa ran off and hid until after lunch, after the monk and Aoi sensei shouted at us. And also, regarding Migiwa, last night she fought the Morio and saw how pitiful I was. Though she said I wasn't the Kinki, she still requested a match. Seeing my reactions during the match, it seemed she discovered something. But she should still have questions for me about the Oni that had the same swordsmanship as me. About the person who had the same swordsmanship as me.
いいけどさ、そういう感じの話なら外行って話した方がいいかもね。壁に耳あり、障子に目あり。別段相手が聞きたくなくても、昔ながらの日本家屋に防音なんて概念ないし。確かにね。
Unlike glass windows and thick wooden doors, the thin paper doors here would only obstruct visibility.
とはいえ、境内あたりでも誰がいるとも限らないし、サラの森まで
That's right. There's a wonderful thing that I did not get to mention last week because, of course, it was America Day and the fireworks were like consistent and persistent and made it impossible to even hear myself think. I found out later that it was because they were literally being set off in like the park adjacent to my apartment. But at the corner that I pass every morning when I go on my morning walks, there is actually a sala tree, like the kind that they're talking about in this game. It is down to just one remaining flower that has not fallen and withered away, which is was really nice to just like see, like, oh wow, this sick Aoi Shiro reference that my neighbor planted years ago. Instead of going to the Oni stepping stones, we headed towards the Sala forest. It seems that Migiwa wanted to go somewhere else besides the Oni stepping stones, which she'd kept watch over during the low tide. Whoa, this screen effect is a lot for me to look at. That's actually a lot to look at. Okay. Migiwa and I entered the Sala forest. I wondered how long we'd walked. I wondered if we were almost there. In the Sala forest, amongst the bright white flowers under the midday sun, Migiwa and I faced each other. Today, Migiwa didn't attempt to hide the same pole she held last night. And as if I had some premonition, I had brought Kumochi, which I'd confiscated from Momoko. A cool wind blew in the saltiness, having been filtered away by the green leaves. The wind, which carried the reflection of green light, rustled in the space between the two of us. Alright, so do we wait for Migiwa to do a thing? Or do we ask about Kaya, who's also Natsu-ne-san? Migi, wait. You gotta do a pound sign, pound sign. Pound sign is how you do it. Yeah, there we go. As with all, as with all relevant ones, I am making a save file here. Well, my ask cheated there, since I was just doing that as an example. So we're still technically, well, I guess I'll all tied up. All right, what's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? We've got about 45 seconds left on the clock. Choo, choo, choo. Don't make me flip a coin. I don't have a coin. It'll be so difficult for me to find one. I'll have to ask Trundle to make the decision if it's tied. Well, Well, Sylvie, it's honestly you missed streams, but not a lot has happened or changed. Although Sylvie, you could be the deciding vote right now. So, whichever one you yes, Sylvie. Sylvie, what is it? Are we waiting or are we asking? Sylvie, you can't vote for Sylvie. Sylvie's not an option, Sylvie. Oh my goodness. Oh, Sylvie's winning. All right. Given this now three-way tie, oh, okay. All right. Sylvie has done it. Fortunately, this is the one that actually oh my yes, hashtag Sylvie decide. Sylvie to the polls. All right. Migiwa had lost to the Kinky and and felt its swordsmanship at first hand. And though the difference in level between the skills of the Kinky and I was great, the foundation seemed to be the same still, which is why Mikiwa thought there was a possibility that the Kinky had changed bodies and possessed me. However, there was only one person I knew of whose skills were hundreds of times above mine. She was already no longer in this world, but if she'd come back to life as an Oni... As I was going to voice my opinion, the ring of a cell phone interrupted me and words melted from my mouth. My bad luck and timing really did just pile up like folded origami. I wondered if Migiwa liked red, since she had a red pole and red clothes. Taking out a red cell phone, she checked the LCD display. Shioko, how does this follow from the last point? Other than the fact that you're, like, really gay and you're like, oh my god, does she like red? Maybe I should get her something red. It seemed to be mail instead of a phone call, and Miku have rapidly read it. It was information about me. Who was once suspected about being the Kinky? No, wait. It was information about my cousin. They translate cousin, but I'm pretty sure Kaya is literally her sister, and it's like some convoluted thing. The point is, oh, Sylvie, the Kinky that they're talking about is, basically someone who is, like, being controlled by an Oni, in order to, like, do whatever the Oni wants done, which is, in this case, steal a sword. And they're suspecting that the Kinky could be, like, maybe Shoko's missing sister. Migiwa stopped and fiddled with her phone. One edge of her mouth lifted up into a smirk. Her eyes didn't smile as she continued to stare at the LCD display. Hey, remember when flip phones got LCD displays and that was like the cutting edge? The picture reflected in the display of the red phone was... I also remembered that picture. It was taken after she won the championship and was featured in a magazine. I anticipated that it was her and had prepared myself, but my heart still made a big jump. Migiwa sans Undertale moments.
写真そっくりそのままの鬼に一撃食らって悶絶したわ。
As if she were infuriated from the bottom of her heart, she said that while rubbing her side. That was proof that it hadn't been a dream or an illusion.
だけどね、オサ。死んだことになっている人間が8年前と同じ姿でこの世をうろつき、しかも鬼切り部が封印していたものを強奪。
8 years. During that time, I'd gone from grade school to middle school to high school and was now the captain of the kendo team. Even if that person was already an adult, it wasn't natural to have not changed at all during that long period. I could understand if someone had been in a huge accident and her appearance changed so much she was mistaken for someone else, but for her to have the same healthy appearance as 8 years ago and to not even try to make contact with me at all.
それが鬼以外の何者だっていうわけ?
Oh, the screen goes into game mode. I mean, Sylvie, it's a Yuri visual novel. The screen goes into game mode at the drop of a hat. She can't be anything else but an Oni. And that was what Mikiwa declared. Her, whose job as a part of the Onikiris was to slay an Oni. Natsune-san, who Mikiwa called Kenki Kaya, wasn't a blameless Oni, but had stolen the sword from the Suten Ryuku, which is when Mikiwa had been injured. Mikiwa, the enemy of my relative and about 5 centimeters taller than me, looked down at me with a hard glare in her eyes. Her stony gaze implied that I shouldn't stick my neck into business of the kinky anymore, just as she'd said.
身内は邪魔よ。突っ込んでなさい。身内だからこそ引っ込んでいられないのよ。
Natsune-san was still alive. No, she might already be dead, but she exists in this world. After hearing that, neither my innate personality nor my learned behavior would allow me to back down. Because it was Natsune-san, I wanted to believe there was some reason for her behavior and ask her about it. If Natsune-san had become the kinky and was no longer the Natsune-san I knew anymore, then...
じゃあ弱いやつも邪魔。足引っ張られたくないし。
Mikiwa closed herself on and thrust the tip of her pole at my throat. Wow.
なんならこの場でもう一度さっきの続きをしてあげてもいいんだけど。
Pointing the pole at me, Mikiwa was saying that she'd use force if necessary to make me back off.
今日の試合のあの動きは夏姉さんの動きじゃない。
Holding Kumochi, I returned the cold, hard, piercing glare. An attack from Natsune-san, nicknamed the Rook, wouldn't have been like that.
分かってるわよ。昨日の怪我が原因でしょ。
Yes, the injury was the
夏姉
key.
さんはまだ鬼じゃない。
The proof was because Mikiwa had only been injured.
なんでそういうこと言うわ。夏姉さんの持ってるの真剣だったんでしょ。だったら右はなんであなたが生きてるわけ？
I could see a small tremor run through the pole that she held.
夏姉さんが峰を返したりしたからじゃないの？
Mikiwa herself had said that it was a possibility. I don't really know what she wore, but would it have stopped a blow from Natsune-san?
どうだかね。
Mikiwa's reply was vague, and she didn't completely reject my suggestion.
どういう風にやられたのかわからなかった。私は信じる。夏姉さんはまだ鬼じゃない。
Yes, though in the end it was still a yet. Mikiwa and I glared at each other as we were distanced from where Komochi and her pole might or might not clash. Time slowly moved forward as we continued to glare at one another. Even if I got beaten up, my heart wouldn't waver. Mikiwa's piercing words wouldn't cause me to step aside. The wind rustled and the flowers and leaves of the sal trees swayed. Mixed in with that noise was the crunching sound of underbrush continually being stepped upon. And what appeared after that was... It turned out to be Momoko, carrying a large bag on her back. Since Momoko came, we didn't conclude our face-off. Momoko said it was perfect timing and dragged me back to the temple. after being dragged back to Shoshinji. I was made to put on a swimsuit that she'd ordered Yasumi to purchase. I didn't know about the particulars, but the size was perfect and there would be no problem putting it on. However... This is Momoko Gay Goblin face. Even if I didn't have to worry about strangers, I'd have to worry about the people here. I should be used to seeing bare skin since we all changed together and took showers at the same time after practice. Perhaps the difference between being in a closed-off room and being under the open sky exacerbated my embarrassment. Even in that room we were sleeping in, since it was pretty big, I just couldn't relax when I was exposing this much skin. That meant that now everyone on the team had a swimsuit, and we'd all go off to the beach tomorrow. It'd be nice if it rained. I don't know if my wish was heard or not, but a small, quick evening shower sent raindrops pattering on the roof. No, I didn't mean rain now, but tomorrow.
Oh, 部長さん。ちょっと手伝ってくれんかね。
Before dinner at dusk, if the days were short, it'd be dark already. The monk finished his round and stopped me in the hall. He moved the round fan in his hand in a big gesture. Then the monk advanced in his years. Would be playing the part of the priest in the play. I didn't really understand what he wanted. Anyways, it seemed to be fine if I just borrowed the monk's fan and waved it around. So... the result of my help was to spread the delicious aroma of the glistening vinegared sushi rice around. And the large plates on the table were like you'd find at a high-end restaurant. Beautiful and piled high with sashimi. It had sliced daikon radish, which was soaked in water, grated yamaimo, and small bits of okra mixed in. Before rolling the hand rolls, the appetizers need to be eaten. The crispy daikon radish and the gummy yamaimo made an interesting contrast in texture. The sharp spiciness and soft sweetness were also another item for comparison.
私の手巻きなのです。私はマグロよりハマチの方が好きなのです。
残念ながら旬ではないが、それでも良いところを見繕ってもらいましたぞ。
では
どうじゃ。
あれ、なんか変に甘い？
なぬ？
確かに甘いですね。
Oh damn, it's the sweet fish.
わしはそうは思わんが。
お醤油、お嬢さんが。お醤油？確かこっちのお醤油は向こうに比べて確かにそう？えらい、ザワッチよく気がついた。卵かけご飯とかには合いそうですけど、私刺身にこの甘口は。
そんな違いがあったとはぬかったわい。どれ、今から酒屋に電話。
大丈夫です。
As usual, we had leisure time after the meal.
さて、時間あるうちにお風呂入っちゃいましょう。ナミちゃん、時間かかりますしね。
Since Nami was attached to both Yasumi and I, the three of us entered the bath together. Since Momoko was hosting the test of courage today, quite a few people were holding off on bathing until after that. Well, it is more efficient to take a bath afterwards. If many people thought about it that way, it'd get really crowded. Well, if I got all sweaty, I didn't mind taking a bath a second time.
私、あんまり髪の毛長くしたことないから、その辺は頼んだわよ。
That was unknown territory for me, who had never had hair longer than my shoulders and who really couldn't compare to Yasumi or Nami. Though I think Nami's hair was also unknown territory for Yasumi. After rinsing my body in the washing area, I sank into the tub of hot water. The water was drawn from a spring nearby. Besides that, it was a normal bath, but quite excessive. The cypress wasn't high quality, but maybe the water changed into something else because of the smell of the wood that was so relaxing. While Yasumi and Nami were washing up, I monopolized the wide tub so I could stretch my limbs as much as I wanted. The tilted bucket dumped water down on top of Nami's head and flowed across her. I preferred the heavy feel of a bath using a bucket more than a shower. When I was small, I felt regretful that I couldn't lift the bucket with one hand, but the times when I was with Natsune-san, I heard the sound of water flowing. As Nami shook her head, droplets flew from the hair that was plastered across her body. Yasumi let out a sigh after finishing this task. She exchanged places with me in the bath and began to massage her tired arms. Replying to Yasumi, whose voice indicated she was feeling well, I started to scrub Nami's pearly white skin. She didn't fidget like other children and quietly let the bubbles be washed off her. After that, she slowly turned to look my way. She didn't really look at my chest, but lower down. She reached out her small white hand and began to pat my leg. The feel of her slightly cool hand along my skin was a bit ticklish. Her hand caught at a certain area and she stopped moving. Underneath Nami's palm was the injury I'd received yesterday. Actually, it felt similar to being immersed in the onsen, as something was gradually, bit my tongue. Nami took her hand away from my legs as if saying, "Look there." I wondered what was going on and I bent forward to look, but I couldn't find my wound. She gave a little shout as she looked my way to check out the little miracle that had just occurred. The water's surface swayed as Yasumi moved, holding onto the edge of the onsen. She looked to be in pain. and Yasumi died.
ちょっと休みしっかりし
She's fine. But a lot of these scenes, if you like are wondering why a lot of these scenes in this part are kind of weird, it's because they do a lot of scenes that are like common scenes that kind of like lead into Yasumi or Nami route things, but they just put them in like the main branch route that everyone sees in all routes. So this ends up like being a much bigger scene that leads to other things in those other routes, but like here in Mikiwa's route, not really so much. Crying all the while, Momoko said it was okay to put Yasumi in the futon as she was and decided to delay the test of courage. It seems Momoko had no intention of conducting a test of courage without Yasumi, who was very important to her. Which is also good because, like, hey, remember how we died when we tried to do the test of courage? Anyway, tomorrow, all recovered. Following Momoko's declaration, everyone went to bed early, but I couldn't sleep and went out to the courtyard.
2 3 4
I continued to swing kumochi as I worked up a sweat. It was heavier than a bamboo sword, so maybe that was why I could put so much vigor into my swings. In just one day, I'd lost twice to Mikiwa. At first, since she lived in a different world than me, I wasn't that upset that I couldn't win against her. Of course, that wasn't the case. I was extremely frustrated.
蛇の目って言ったっけあの技
I didn't know whether it received its name from the rotating tip of the sword or because of the makizawa, or makiwaza.
右輪が普段使ってるのは刀じゃなくてあの本か
Then the Jia no Me was really meant to be used not by a bamboo sword unfamiliar to Mikiwa, but that pole she gripped.
市内や北東よりも長いわよね
I swung kumochi as I reminisced about the 2 matches I had today. I wanted to win against Mikiwa. If, like Mikiwa said, Natsune-sen had truly become an Oni down to her core, then I had to chase after and stop her. You know, like heterosexual things, being obsessed with defeating another girl in armed combat. Also, if the Sekiganki were using Natsune-sen like Mikiwa said, I wanted to defeat it and avenge Natsune-san. Sekiganki. Mikiwa said that the one-eyed, white-haired Onmyoji who had brought Kuro-sama's faith to Urashima was suspicious. The person I'd met in the solid forest on the first night here. I wondered if that was the Sekiganki that was using Natsune-san and made me recall feelings that weren't my own. Perhaps the reason I had such thoughts rooted deep within me was due to some magic cast on me. Mikiwa, Natsune-san, the Sekiganki. Right now, every one of them was a target that I couldn't even think about reaching. Though I knew that even if I spent all night swinging a wooden sword, nothing would change. Even then, I had to continue swinging. I still wanted to become stronger. The salty air from the sea felt refreshing against my warmed-up body.
そろそろ干潮が近いわね
I wonder if Mikiwa was standing still on the guard over there. She was surely doing just that. As I expected, Mikiwa was at the stepping stones of the Oni, and, as expected again, she had her fishing line out in the ocean.
右は夏姉さんはまだ怪我までしといて懲りないわね懲りないわね
It's not like I didn't understand her feeling of wanting to tell me, a newbie, to stay out of the way because I'd get hurt. As if I'd let a painful experience like that stop me, though. Before Natsune-san had become an Oni, she had been a precious relative, and until I was shown definitive proof of it, and even then if she had become an Oni, then Mikiwa didn't hide a sigh, indicating This is why relatives are troublesome. Neither of us spoke much as we waited for our target. We continued waiting for the time when that person would come. And today, again. With a splash like koi jumping up for food strewn on the top of a pond, the Morio, which were both Shikigami and Kappa, appeared. Following Migiwa, who threw her pole aside, I also stood up. In my hand, I held Kumochi, which is imbued with the power from the Tokusaki no Tsubaki. That was proof of my determination. Unlike yesterday, when I saw those things for the first time, I'd already anticipated something like this. I'm fine. I'm still calm. Maintaining my posture and not letting down my guard, I counted up the number of Morio. The palm that held Kumochi was soaked in sweat. In truth, I was frightened. The frustration from that time was still rooted in my chest. I wonder why. Even though she was an opponent who'd surpassed normal human limits, losing to her compared to other Senpai or students was vexing enough for me to not be able to sleep, and made me go out at night and swing a wooden sword. Really, why did I feel this way? Even though we were in a situation like this, Migiwa's face, voice, and attitude were still relaxed. So they were just small fry, or paradoxically speaking, the only ones I could handle were small fry. Even though she said that, I felt the frustration within me lighten just a little. However, I pretended I wasn't affected and did my utmost not to let anything show on my face as I replied in a low voice. I swung Kumochi in response. When it connected, it felt heavy and was different than the feeling of hitting armor with a bamboo sword. Using the reaction against hitting the elastic skin and flesh, I held Kumochi aloft. I slammed down once again. Since the Morio was low to the ground, it would be easy to hit and miss, but I used all my might and swung down on its head. The second blow felt different than the first. At first, the contradictory feeling of softness and hardness against the end of the sword was the same, but I passed through it. The sensation as the Morio disappeared was like hitting a solidified mound of sand, though finer and softer. The Morio crumbled into something resembling black dust and vanished like scattered ash. One down. My first attack was hesitant, because I felt like I was just hitting some animal, but if they were just going to vanish. I utilized the abundant amount of energy in my stiff shoulders. She said that in a sing-song voice and seemed to be in good spirits, though I could already tell who the winner would be. The Migiwa brought up the point about that's what it's like in the beginning, there was no denying her dominance. In other words, it was a matter of sheer difference in ability. There were also strong opponents who were the same age as me that I'd lost to, but Migiwa was outside of our league. The night sky looked very high. The tension in my body was suddenly released, and I forgot why I came here in the first place as I stared at the stars for a while. Crunch. A hard sound that was neither the sound of the waves nor the wind made Migiwa and I hold our breaths. Crunch, crunch. Straining my ears, I could definitely hear, at intervals, something coming closer. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Those weren't the sounds of Amoria's wet footsteps, but of the hard sole of a shoe stepping over the rocks. The sound was now loud enough that I didn't have to strain my ears to hear it anymore. In front of us were the unusually shaped Oni stepping stones, which were exposed to low tide. If someone was coming to the forbidden place at this time, then this had to be their target. Crunch, 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 crunch. And the footsteps seemed to confirm it. I gave a sharp glance down at Kumochi, which I was holding. Migiwa already had her pole in hand and was looking at the rocks that led to the stepping stones. As if saying that I shouldn't make a move, she stepped back onto the rock in front of me, exposing her back. Crunch. For a moment, I felt as if the sound of footsteps got louder. From the shadows of the rocks cast onto the road by the moonlight, the shadow of a person emerged. Crunch. At the next sound of footsteps, the shadow of the person broke off from the other shadows and appeared bathed in moonlight. The figure was tall for a girl, taller even than Migiwa. The casual black shirt she wore in a careless manner. The shoulder-length hair was tied back so as not to get in the way, but in a clumsy manner, with bangs hanging all over her face. This was the figure of Natsune-san that I knew. Crunch. I guess the sound of those footsteps really did belong to her. Natsune-san, who Migiwa called an Oni, had heavy steps, and with a shadow that blocked out the moonlight, she didn't look like a ghost. With an injured arm that was bleeding and a gritted face trying to fight off that pain, she didn't look like an Oni at all. Or an undead person. So Natsune-san really was alive. But at that time, Natsune-san didn't Natsune-san get cut down and die? Wasn't she dead? That's right. Red blood, crimson blood, a mortal wound she shouldn't have survived. Even then, Natsune-san fought for my sake until the very end. That memory, which should have been swallowed up by a torrent of water and washed away. At Migiwa's voice, the bubble burst. I wondered who exactly had done that to Natsune-san, as her entire body was covered in countless sword cuts of varying sizes. But more than those wounds, there was one thing about her that was different from the Natsune-san I knew. She wasn't holding a familiar bamboo sword or, well, a bokuto or a bokken, I think. It wasn't a Japanese blade either, like what had cut down Migiwa before. The shape, the weight, and the balance were different from a Japanese blade. That bloodthirsty double-edged sword would be hard to wield. Migiwa blocked the way to the stepping stones. Natsune-san cocked her eyebrows slightly and with a harsh look said, The reason Migiwa waited here twice a day at noon and night was for this moment. The pride of an Onikiri would probably not allow her to step down when faced with an opponent she had suffered defeat to. That's good. Now we don't have to feel awkward about finding her hot because she's not a police officer anymore. We only have to feel awkward about finding her hot because of her future incest plotline.
ちょっとシャレにならないっていうか、冗談にしてもタチ悪すぎよね。日本の関係制度に物申したいって感じ。
Eloquent, Kukian Migiwa started cleverly speaking. If she lost in terms of pure power, then she was willing to crack jokes to agitate her opponent.
で、被害届はまだだから、今なら示談で済ませてあげるけど。そこを通してもらおう。
But the wholeheartedly stubborn Natsume-san completely disregarded that suggestion. She held up the sword to the moonlight, and as if talking to herself, ground out these words.
私はすでに人ではない。人であった私は死んだのだ。なるみかい。違う。私はすでにそうではない。今しがたまで死者ではあっても鬼ではあってもその名で呼ばれる資格を持っている。けれど今の私は違う。たった今なった。たった今切った肉を切る手応えを私は知った骨を
Yes, Slappy! Welcome,
私
welcome.
は知った人を切るのは初めてだったけれど私は先ほど確信した私はそうだと確信できた私が切ったあの者はもはや生きてはいないだろう震えなかったでも足も心もなすべきことをなすためならば何の考えもなく人を切れると知った黄泉より帰ったこの体のみならず魂までも鬼となり果てていたと知ったけれどそれでも構わない人の身では神を切るには不足私はあの子を救うため望んで鬼となったのだ元気かやそうだ
Shiver. Because of her unexpectedly cold words, I couldn't even say anything. Though she was awkward, she'd always been this kind. That voice wasn't like Natsume-san, and I couldn't call out to her.
四天王のキヤン右は押してまいる前の雪辱はここで果たす
Like a nimble mountain cat, Migiwa leapt from rock to rock as she headed towards Natsume-san. The vermilion pole swung around in a downward stroke. She wasn't in Natsume-san's range yet. Though Natsume-san had the nickname Rook, she used quick one-handed strikes. Migiwa wasn't in the range of a casual swing. However, after Natsume-san swung that sword once, the air in the vicinity became heavy. That weight wrapped around Migiwa's limbs and robbed them of their motion. Though Migiwa had been nimble, her movements became jerky as she crumbled apart like a broken gear. My lungs burned from the inside. The miasma that spread out felt as if it would corrode all the nerves and muscles in my body. Migiwa staggered, her knees bent, and she looked like she was going to fall down. Even before she was in range of the sword, Migiwa looked like she'd been hit by something and was going to collapse. And then Migiwa fell into the ocean. Natsu said that to me as she crossed over the rocks where Migiwa had just been. She probably didn't know it was me. Using the power of an Oni which surpassed that of a human, Natsume-san leapt over the stepping stones without looking back. Alright, here's our next choice. I mean, like, we're on the Migiwa route. You can probably guess which one is the one that precedes the Migiwa route, but maybe the other one also has some interesting things that we could go. So, vote now. Vote now. Are we going to chase after Kaya or save Migiwa? Migiwa sweep. Alright, well. Sylvie. Okay, well, I'm sorry, we're going with Sylvie. I think we're going with Sylvie. Secret third option. Shoko is diverting to the route of dedicating her time to playing Sylvie games and 100%ing them, and she's going to become a Sylvie game speedrunner. Anyway, we're going to save Migiwa. I only hesitated for a second. More important to me than chasing after Natsune-san was... I chose to save Migiwa and jumped into the ocean at night. The reason my luck was normally bad might be because it was saved up for situations like this. Perhaps the energy of the sword had stolen her movement abilities, because she was already listless by the time I reached her. One thing you're not supposed to do when attempting a water rescue is to suddenly jump in. If one of a human's 4 limbs is unable to move, it becomes really easy for that person to drown. One fortunate thing was that Migiwa didn't make any strange movements like cling tightly to me. And there was one other fortunate thing. Considering the sharp rocks, especially exposed by the low tide, Migiwa and I weren't injured at all when falling or jumping in. But that didn't mean she wasn't entirely uninjured either. Her breathing had stopped. Migiwa wasn't taking any breaths. Even if I called an ambulance, how long would it take to arrive? It would definitely not make it in time. Then I had to do something. Migiwa had called Natsune-san, my relative, the Kinky, and had been casting a search net for her. But still, I was the one who had the most contact with Migiwa in the past couple days, and it was also of my own accord. It seems that I would have to be the one to resuscitate her. It was an oft-used situation in stories and such, though. I learned about this in class, but that was just from a book. This was the first time putting it into practice. This was CPR, but the experience of me touching someone else's lips with mine was... Excluding when I was a little kid, I haven't done that at all. I knelt down next to her, bent forward and put my face near hers. This might be the first time I've seen Migiwa this close. Under the light of the cool blue moon, her soaked skin was covered in shadow, which heightened the contrast of her face. Yeah, I think the other thing is, like, the thing that's rendering it far less sexy than the narrative thinks is that, like, she's almost dead. You need to hurry. You should be, like, luridly glazing, you should luridly gaze upon her in a gay way after you know she's not about to die. Because she was so expressive, it was easy to get the impression that she was always a strong person, but it seemed that she was subdued along with her consciousness, and I once again realized the beauty of her chiseled features. Her bedraggled hair, closed eyelids that didn't even flutter, and slightly open lips made me nervous. Okay, this is CPR. CPR. I shook my head, causing the seawater to fly from my hair in place of my idle thoughts. Anyways, the first step was to lift up Migiwa's jaw and free up her airway. This wasn't the time for hesitation. When it comes to CPR, even starting a few minutes later would reduce the success rate. I filled my lungs with the salty night air and leaned over Migiwa from the side, covering her body with my own. I added my lips to the open lips of Migiwa. Our soft lips touched and I blocked out any openings, confirming that everything was airtight. I transferred the warm air from inside my chest to her. From my lungs to my trachea. From my trachea to the inside of my mouth. It really would be, Lappy. It really would be pretty funny. From my mouth to Migiwa's. After I confirmed that Migiwa's lungs filled, I removed my mouth from hers and repeated that over and over. Migiwa finally began to start breathing on her own. I do think that that is an important note that I'm getting for if you write a dramatic CPR resuscitation scene. The way that you should split it is you should have the intense, dramatic, fast-paced action sequence tension before you know that their life is saved, and then the, like, thirsty, romance, horny, shy, gay emotions sequence after you know that they're alive. Because otherwise, it really would be, like, really weird if you just spent all that time getting, like, flustered and like, oh no, oh my god, can I really kiss her? And then she dies. Her closed eyelids opened and her wet eyes reflected the light of the moon. Since Natsunae-san had already crossed over, there was no point in watching the stepping stones, so we returned to Shoshinji. I thought Migiwa would want to immediately give chase, but trying to cross over at high tide was like going to a watery grave. Migiwa remained calm. If she wasn't level-headed, then I didn't think she'd last long in the kind of business being an onikiri.
いつもこんなことやってるわけ。いや、さすがに剣を持った剣気なんて大物相手にすることはめったにないわよ。
I had a hard time fighting against the Morio, but something of that level didn't seem to be a match for Migiwa.
今日はしんどかったわ。
She climbed the long stairs to Shoshinji as if spurring her weary body forward.
お、あそこに見えるのナミじゃない？ナミ？
That's right, she seemed to be searching for me last night, too. We entered Shoshinji, bringing Nami along with us, and then proceeded to wash all the salt wind and water that clung to our bodies. It really was a good thing to have baths available 24 hours a day. Exactly, Sylvie. The sword of power.
おはようございます。あやしろ、その顔色。また見てしまいました。見たって幽霊。
I've been through a tough situation, but it seems they had their own problems to deal with here. In the warm morning light, the pallor of her face was like being bathed in moonlight, and it did look like someone who had been attacked by a ghost. A long-haired ghost girl. The Morio also had long hair, or perhaps a mane, but no matter what, they didn't look like young girls. Well, just like how dugongs were mistaken for mermaids with their short stature, they might look like girls from far away at night. But Aoi Shiro had seen it from up close and had said it was transparent. If the Morio did this, then it wasn't like we couldn't solve that by smacking them with a wooden sword or something. Let me consult with Migiwa after she returns. Ooh. Oh, after Runa stopped being sleepy girl, wow. Was what I was thinking about, but...
では今朝は走る代わりに座ってみてはいかがかな?
I turned out to consult with the monk instead. Yes, I did have a big active day today, in addition to, you know, all of the other things. I drove up to Salem and, of course, got my hair recolored, but I also walked around downtown Salem a bit. If you've never been to downtown Salem, it's cute. I mean, like, there is an amount of it that is insufferably tourist trap oriented, but there's some nice cute things, and there are some like legitimate cool history things. Then there's also a thing that like has a billboard outside that says "Step inside to enter Salem's biggest witch," and then other signs like "Get inside Salem's biggest witch." All of these other things. There's like a big statue you can climb inside, but you know. Anyway, I turned out to consult with the monk instead.
確かに
No, no, I moved so I could be closer to my friends. It just so happens that my friends are closer to Salem. One thing that is a common misconception, I think, of people, broadly, but especially Americans, ironically, considering that, I mean, like, it all happened in America, is that, like, Salem isn't, like, Salem being closely associated with witches and witchcraft is actually a modern sort of thing. Like, if anything, the association, like, historically with Salem is about, like, absurd, Protestant religious fervor, which, you know, you can find that lots of places in the US. But, like, modern times, it's gotten that, you know, the association of, like, oh, yes, this is where witches are. The problem is that I get easily irritated by, modern neo-pagan movements and things like that. But we can't talk about that because we have to talk about Bishamon. Bishamonten.
エラに歴史ありというやつじゃな。正神寺が建立寺からずっと禅寺であったら、毘沙門天の像ではなかったのではないかの。
昔は違う宗派だったんですね。
確か天台宗ではなかったかな。とにかく正神寺建立以来の歴史と伝統あるご本尊。
Yes, yes.
お顔もいいですし、これは相当評価の高い仏像なんでしょうね。わあ、もしかして国宝級ってやつですか？国宝になったりしたら参拝客も増えてお寺も綺麗になるかもですよ。
ああ、いかんいかん。しかるべきところに通報するのはおやめくだされ。
通報？あ、もしやこの仏像。
いやいや、今のは失言じゃった。単なる言葉のあやですからお気になさらずに。
それでは何故問題？
下手なものに認定されるとそれを
うわー、設備投資にお金かかりそうですね。
ある噂によると寄付がもらえるそうなんじゃが、ある噂によると没収されてしまうそうな。ああ、恐ろしい。
ああ、恐ろしい。
毘沙門天でもあるクンビーラは富と財宝を司る神でもあるはずなんじゃが、当寺院へのご利益はもっぱら武力に偏っておるらしい。
One of the four guardian kings, Tamonten of the north, was also known as Sezaiten, builder of fortune.
ちなみに毘沙門天は鬼門を守護する戦神として知られておる。例えば京都の鬼門を守るのは鞍馬寺の毘沙門天じゃ。ところでお嬢さん方、意をもって意を制するという言葉を知っておるかな。
It was probably like the phrase using poison to fight poison.
毘沙門天ももともとは水の眷属を率いる夜叉、いわゆる鬼の主会だったわけじゃ。
質問よろしいでしょうか？
何ですかな、副部長さん。
毘沙門様が水の眷属を率いているとどうしてわかるんですか？
毘沙門天が持っておられる武器、わかりますかな？
三つ股の矛ですね。
三叉戟というのは東西問わず水に関係する神仏が武器としてよく使っておるものなんじゃよ。
Momoko enthusiastically raised her hand.
ギリシア神話のポセイドンもなんかそんな感じの武器持ってました。漫画でゲームで。
I love Momoko so much. They're like, you nerd, where'd you learn about Poseidon from? Manga? No, video games.
ちなみに竜宮の竜王も御仏の教えに強化された存在ですから、毘沙門天とほぼ同じですな。
After that long introduction, it was time to begin Zen meditation while sitting. Though we weren't doing anything in particular, it was rather hard to sit just for the sake of sitting. In addition, during that long period, we weren't sitting in a familiar Seiza position, but in a lotus position. Trying to think about something interesting actually might make you sleepy instead, and if that was revealed from your expression... Along with a loud shout, the Zen stick would come flying. That was just a Looney Tunes screen wipe there. Incredible. It somehow feels as if the time that passed was longer than it really was.
足しびれました。走っていた方が楽だったかもしれません。やあやあ皆さんお疲れ様。朝ごはんができましたよ。ってももちゃん、なんでそんな目で見るのかな。そういえばさわっちは座ってなかった。だって私朝ごはん作ってたし。ところでおさ、なんで立たないの？ちょっと足がね。ふふん、それはちょうどよかった。何よ。
Migiwa gave an audacious smile as she approached me, making me uneasy. I wanted to retreat, but my foot was still numb and I couldn't move as I wished.
大丈夫大丈夫。足に触ったりしないから安心して。おさ、ゆうべは助かった。ありがとう。別に大したことしてないじゃない。
Yes, I didn't do anything in particular. My cheeks turned red.
命に関わる大したことだし、そこでお礼をしたいんだけど。
That situation was out of my control and I just performed CPR since it was necessary. It's not something that really requires thanks. Why did Migiwa's face get so close to mine? It's pretty gay. Y'all seeing this shit? And then the distance between us was 0. Different from yesterday. Migiwa's lips were warm. Wow, I wonder what she meant by that. What could a girl possibly mean by that? Along with an angry shout, I clenched my hands into a fist and took a swing at her. Yes, the only reason my face was red was definitely because of anger. What in the world was she thinking, doing something like this in the morning and in front of everyone? She dodged. Because my foot was numb, she escaped my hand and it didn't reach her. I love how much of a gremlin she is. With that grin on her face, I couldn't tell if she was being honest or not. It might unexpectedly be true, but if she were saying something like that, it also made me think she was lying. Wow, Yasumi is just about to collapse from having her gay heart broken. I love how we just cut from that to like, oh yes, breakfast time. It wasn't because Aoi Shiro wasn't feeling well, but breakfast today was grated yam rice bowls using leftover sashimi from last night. The sashimi was on top of yam that looked like fallen snow. It was a specialty of Urashima and good for summer fatigue. As a contrast to that relatively thick main dish, the clear soup today was light. In addition, Yasumi made her super special fluffy egg roll omelets, which were a big hit with Nami, who was happily eating them. Our great chef should have been pleased that the menu she prepared and created such a sensation. Migiwa had been a little too mischievous.
ミギーさんだけご飯抜きとか、ミギーさんのだけわさびが特盛りだとか、そういう意地悪ができないザワッチに感謝してください。そうね。やすみ、ありがとう。
You know, one thing I've realized, that is a parallel between this and the other game that we're reading for the podcast right now, Fatal 12, is that the protagonist is dense as a concrete slab when it comes to girls having a crush on her. I wondered why Yasumi was in the most displeased mood when she wasn't the one that had been teased by Migiwa. Since a while back, the monk had been keeping his eye on the old-fashioned television, which had legs attached to it in the corner. The unfamiliar announcer reading the weather report had probably been from a local station. It seemed the accursed karma that had caused bad weather from when Kuro-sama's festival was near and was still growing strong. Reality was just the opposite, and the first impression the ancient renowned temple gave was that of a deteriorating building. Though, if it were just the morning dew, it'd be fine.
少し繰り上げた方がいいみたいですね。ですけど、そういう時こそ人手があった方がいいんじゃないですか。お嬢さんらが屈強な雲水なら、わしも遠慮なくこき使ったじゃろうがの。なに、節操一人。
The monk's eyes abruptly looked towards Nami, who was eating a fluffy rolled omelet. Ah, that's right. When we returned home, that means we'd have to part with Nami. We still didn't know Nami's origins and couldn't hide our worry about what lay ahead for her, the monk said in a bright voice. He closed one eye and emphasized that we had nothing to worry about. In a roundabout way, he made it clear that even if we stayed, it'd cause a lot of trouble. Morning practice was cancelled. I wanted to ask Mikiwa some questions, so I went searching for her. I didn't think she would be at the stepping stones. Roughly speaking, the tides were due to the moon's gravity and changed according to the distance between the moon and the sea. Even more generally speaking, when the moon was right above, it was high tide, and when it was at the horizon, it was low tide. Then the next low tide would be in the evening, and there was no need to keep watch for right now. And since Natsune-san, who was holding the sword, had broken through, there was no point in keeping watch at all. I wonder where Mikiwa was. I wondered if she was asking the Onikiri of Suten about what to do from here on out. I wondered if she was in the Sala Forest like yesterday. If she went all the way to the forest because I heard her talking on the phone the first day here, I'd feel a little bit bad, but if my actions had affected Mikiwa that much for some reason, I didn't really mind. And Mikiwa really was in the Sala Forest. I wondered if it was from the Bronze Age or something, since that double-edged sword had an antiquated look. However, that blade was a mysterious white color like bone and didn't seem to be made of any ordinary metal. Perhaps it wasn't a steel blade, but some type of stone blade? If so, then it'd be from an even older era.
あれって一体何なわけ？あれが剣よ。大昔から四天の者が徳川の軍門に下り、鬼切りで四天刀として組み込まれるより前から封印し続けてきた呪いの剣。いや、逆ね。四天刀は剣を封じるためだけに作られた。剣を封じることが天を守ることにつながるとされてきた。ちなみに剣の存在は鬼切りでも一番偉い人も知らない。存在自体は知っていても四天刀が封じているということは知らないはず。世間一般的には失われたことになってるから。
After it was sealed about 800 years ago, it was considered a cursed item from the Age of Gods that was lost. The cursed sword of the Dragon Palace.
呪いの効果は様々。頭痛、めまい、吐き気、手足の震え、倦怠感。それって風邪の諸症状？抜本的な対策がないってタチの悪いあたりは似てるかもね。治療薬作ったら表彰もんだって言うし。
We were joking around, but we'd felt part of that very curse
とりあ
ourselves.
えず持っていると危ないものよ。
It's something whose very existence is dangerous.
剣の形をしているから単なる武器だって固定観念持ってるけど、あれは力というか呪いのような力の結晶なのよ。
It was dangerous and should have been in a threefold box with red earth between each layer to provide interference with the outside.
それにつけても不思議なのは、長が私より影響を受けてないってことね。そうなの？
I had also felt bad, and it was as if the air around me was rather heavy, but
ダメだ、体がバランス。
since Mikiwa had been closer to the sword than me, I thought she would be more affected.
あれ、実際のところ一般人なら混沌ものよ。
Did that mean that Mikiwa's reaction was normal and mine wasn't? But still, but then, wow. So, aw, Lappy, it's okay. There will be plenty of VODs up. So here's one thing. Like I said, on the whole, so far, the fan translation has been a lot easier to read, but that does not necessarily mean that it has been more accurate. So I am just going to save here. Nice little safety save. Then or still, yes, cast your votes quickly, then or still. Yeah, it's been much easier to follow along and read, but like I said, it's not necessarily that it's more accurate or conveying all the meaning of the original completely. So, yeah, so we'll go with then we'll go with then. But if that were the case, oh, hey, I just looked up in the guide, and apparently that is the one that we needed to continue on the route. Good thing that we have that guide. It might be helpful regarding the sword, even if I wasn't as strong as Mikiwa. When Mikiwa's sharp movements were dulled like that, I might even be able to beat her. Mikiwa seemed to guess my suggestion, since she stuck out her palm with 5 fingers outstretched in a sign of no thank you. Yeah, I do think that the general feeling of the choices is like, but if that's the case, then therefore, and the other one is, but still, even if that's the case, it is a very difficult thing to convey. Since he expressly called himself the sword's guardian, he should be different than Mikiwa and have resistance to its power. And if he were a veteran Onikiri, then he should have better sword skills than us.
そういうわけで一般人の方はお引き取りくださいな。
She was saying that with a person like that, I wasn't needed. But I was also Natsume-san's niece. They're not 100% clear on the exact relationship between the two of them. I think it's like, I'm gonna go off of my remembering of discussions around the game at the time, that she was like either a first cousin or biological sister, or probably half sister, but so far they have called Natsu her generally relative, cousin, sister, and aunt. So we'll just keep a tally of that for later on.
じゃあ勝手にさせてもらうわ。今まで通り。
I just didn't learn. After she heard my fighting words, Migiwa grinned like a cat.
へえ。生き残れたらいいわね。
Wait, I just realized those aren't M dashes, are they? Isn't that like... Isn't that just a single stroke kanji? Did they use kanji instead of an M dash? She didn't oppose me. And it seems that Migiwa was also waiting up to meet with that person. A bit after that, as Migiwa and I were wrapping up our conversation.
やっぱりこっちにいましたか。
Genki voice! Yeah, it does look like perhaps. Or maybe that's just the font. Maybe that's just the font and it's just a hyphen. Anyway. Momoko headed our way, the underbrush crunching under her feet. Now that I think about it, Momoko also saw the two of us here together yesterday afternoon. Migiwa confirmed that the other person was harmless and hid her pole, feigning an innocent look on her face. Momoko didn't seem to notice. She said that, omitting details such as the current conditions or introducing herself at all. That's right. Yesterday she said that she'd also bought a swimsuit for me and the whole team should go together to the ocean. The wind had gotten stronger, but fortunately the weather was still good, and if we stayed by the beach, it shouldn't be a problem. Since we were leaving Nunasaka tomorrow, this was our only chance to play by the beach. So, would I finally end up wearing that swimsuit? I was a little reluctant to do so, but it was a present from the people of interest in the kendo team, so I couldn't really refuse.
ミギーさんも一緒にどうですか。ああ、いや、私はいいや。水着持ってないし。
Since she was waiting for reinforcements, I was thinking that she didn't really have to bluntly decline, but I was a little relieved. But was I a little relieved that Mikiwa wouldn't see me in that swimsuit? Passing Shoshinji's gate and going down to the stairs, there was only one road that soon led to the ocean. Whether it's because there weren't any sea-bathing guests or because they didn't come, there weren't any houses nearby our facilities. We changed in our rooms and then put on an overgarment and headed down to the side stairs towards our target, the beach. But still, it must be because of the time and situation that I felt so different about this place. Running in the morning and wearing our dogi, I didn't have any of these weird feelings, but once I put on this swimsuit, it felt surreal to have scantily clad young girls walking out of a temple, and I felt like we'd received some sort of divine punishment. In the past, women were forbidden from entering temple gates because they were thought to be ignite impure thoughts. And I wasn't even thinking wearing a demure one piece, but a risque bikini.
これは照れるわね。よく似合っていますよ。星先輩、ブラボーです。
No, maybe it was just me. It was a refreshing bikini with a base color of white and blue trim. In the past, white swimsuits were said to become transparent with wet, but nowadays that was a needless worry. Even if that was the case, it still felt as if the bikini I was wearing was too revealing. The basic lines of the design were rather ordinary, but the combination of colors made it look sharp and pretty. The simple swimsuit was a bit too refreshing in some places and was more revealing than normal underwear. It was a manufactured item sold in normal stores, so many people would have seen it at the ocean or at the pool, but even if people said it looked good on me and praised me, it was still embarrassing to wear. I didn't usually hide when changing, and these are people who've seen me in the showers after practice. It was just a swimsuit, but the reason my skin was red was surely because of the sun shining down on me from up high. Momoko was wearing an orange-based checkered bikini top which suited the energetic, carefree girl, but the reason it looked awfully childish might be because of the design, which had frills gathered at the chest. The people who cooked were either my grandpa or me. We've always eaten normal Japanese-style home-cooked food. Grandpa was an acupuncturist, so he knew more than normal about herbal medicines, but that really shouldn't be relevant. Though Yasumi ate the same 3 meals as Momoko, though sometimes in a lesser amount, she seemed to have developed rather well. It might have also been due to the contrast with her delicate and slim limbs, neck and waist. Well, if everyone was different, then you could say Momoko's basal metabolism rate was too high. In other words, my strange theory was that before it could stick to her body, almost all the energy of the food she ate was used up. The white back facing my way, with her slim shoulders going up and down, was our manager, who was trying her hardest. This beach sequence, I somehow had blacked this entire thing out from my memory. Like, I forgot entirely that they ever went to the beach. Like, I remember what happens after this, but somehow I did not register that they went to the beach. I feel like I would have remembered the, like, gratuitous amount of boob close-ups that they do. Her shoulders relaxed as she took a breath. It seemed like she'd exhausted all of her strength. She readied herself, and once more began her previous action. Her shoulders jumped with trepidation, and she slowly turned around. Since Yasumi was so startled, it turned out that I was the one who got surprised. Unfortunately, though she'd been working pretty hard, it hadn't really expanded much. Even though it was this close, going back and forth would be quite a bit of work. I wondered why in the world she'd gone back. In this world, each person has his or her forte, and there's a right way for each of them to do that job. I snatched the ball from Yasumi and began to inflate it. As I continued blowing, the beach ball inflated rapidly. Inflating it depends on the work of your heart and lungs, but she looked to me as if I was trying to devise what sort of trick I was using. No, she's not staring because she's trying to figure out how you're doing it. She's staring because she's gay. It's said that a storm will be coming tomorrow, but today the Unisaka sky was blue and the sun was shining brightly. I ruffled Yasumi's wavy hair, which was warmed up by the sun. She looked happy and smiled. The colorful beach ball danced into the blue sky. With a light slap, the beach ball made a parabolic curve as it passed from each of us without hitting the ground. More than returning the ball, Nami just hit it, and the formidable Momoko continued to run relays over to her to hit the ball back. All of the sports teams had their eye on Momoko, except the volleyball team. It seems they had no powers of observation. Nami seemed happy to look up and see that her ball was dancing just as high in the air as everyone else. Nami had completely become attached to everyone on the team, and we'd have to part from her tomorrow. Ignoring various real-world considerations, I would have liked to bring Nami back with me. Both my parents work and my grandfather still had his practice, so if I really begged to add someone like Nami would be... Though, since the monk was a very good person, even after we left, I think everything would go well. Since we were having so much fun right now, I'd leave dampening the mood until later. The ball was carried away by the wind and in another direction. Kurosama's festival was going to occur tomorrow. The wind near the Unosaka Sea had already gotten stronger. Momoko went and chased after the ball. Nami also went with Momoko, and after a delay, padded up to her. Nami received a direct hit. As we were playing around, the sun had started to go down and the western sky was dyed red. Putting the grass radical on top of the character for West made the character for Matter red. The shadows stretched out. That might be the reason why it caught my eye and I was able to notice its existence. In the shadow of the rocks. Yes, Matter red or Rose Matter. Anyway, in the shadows of the rocks connecting the Oni stepping stones and the beach, a humanoid shadow moved. The shadows stretched out long, but the small shape of those shadows didn't belong to a person. There's Morio at a time like this? From the battles I'd experienced with Mikiwa, I thought they only came out at night. From the start of twilight to the moments after, we entered the time of gloaming. Ignoring the ambiguous meaning of night, was the third quarter of the hour of the ox well as the time of when the Morio ruled? Also, the Oni stepping stones to Onigashima, aka Urashima, was towards the northeast, the direction of the Oni gate. 1, 2, 3, 4. Around those number of Morio shadows moved in. Nami was between the beach towel I was sitting on and them. The Morio bobbed up and down and looked about to leap. My skin was exposed in my current state of dress, but fortunately I was holding Kumochi. My hobby wasn't wearing a swimsuit while carrying a sword, but it was a good thing Momoko brought it for smashing a watermelon. I had no choice but to fight. With Kumochi in hand, I rushed towards Nami, kicking at sand. Alright, do we fight or do we run? Choice time. Choice time. Do we fight or do we run? 1, run. Safety save. Fight, fight. Fight, run, fight, run, fight, run, fight, run, fight, run, fight. Okay. Okay, we're gonna fight. Rather than escaping with Nami, if there were only this many of them. I ran past the surprised Nami and continued heading towards the Morio. The first strike belonged to me. The arms of the Morio were unexpectedly long, but if I used the one-handed skill that Natsume-san was good at, if it was a blow like that of Natsume-san. I swung while running, judging my opponent's footsteps from his speed and adjusting my footwork. Kicking up sand, I leapt forward. The wooden sword had just missed its opportunity to smash a watermelon, so I put lots of force into it as I swung down. For an instant, there was a hard impact that was probably tougher than hitting a watermelon would have been. In the next instant, it turned into something like black fog and melted into the red sky, leaving no trace behind. With absolute concentration, I swung Komochi around. I was calm, since this wasn't my first time seeing them. Luckily, there weren't many, and I was able to defeat them all. There were no other signs of Morio, but we'd already had plenty of fun, and it was probably better to stop playing in the ocean and return to the temple. I also wanted to discuss some things with Migiwa. And we're probably going to leave it right here tonight, because we're just past 9:30, and we've escalated things quite a bit, and also now... Well, yes, now we're about to break some tension a little bit, but let's go ahead and save right here. Let's take a look at our flowchart, and wow, look how far down we are. Yeah, lots happened. Also, we were able to get a lot further, a lot faster, and we're gonna continue keeping up this sort of pace. Also, next time we might be able to finish Migiwa's route. Like, we might be able to. Now, granted, we will not be 100%ing Migiwa's route because, like I mentioned, there is one happy end, one normal end, and like a half dozen bad ends for each character. We are only going for Migiwa's best ending. But we will probably reach it next week. So that's really exciting. And we're gonna... Listen, we're so close to getting to the nice Migiwa conclusion part, which I did enjoy 15 years ago, if I remember right. And then we can do the Yasumi route, which is also fine. And then, finally, we can get to the part where this game is, like, good. I know I'm promising a lot and asking you all to wait, but thank you for accompanying me on this journey through Aoi Shiro. I am glad that we were able to get the fan translation back, both for nostalgia and readability purposes. And I will see you here, same time, same place, next week. Good night, everybody.